Hi, my name is Lexington Koeck, and today I will be walking you through my project on Apple's sourcing and operations plan. This will be focusing on option B, which is increasing output without raising prices. I'll be talking about how Apple's goals in its supply chain, while their new sourcing strategy and operation improvements, and how the company can manage risk more effectively. After research, Apple's objectives are pretty easily understood. Apple released the viral iPhone 16 Pro ad, which shot up a demand in their product. This challenge now is hard to boost production while keeping prices the same, since it is a new product with new technology, which is an uprising cost for them. The main goals are to increase their output by 20% by 2026, keep quality high while staying efficient, strengthen supplier relationships by using data and analytics to stay ahead of any risk that may come their way, which can cost them money. But overall, it's about growing smart and not just growing fast. So as they're trying to save money for their customers, they're also trying to save money for themselves, but still be successful in those ways. As Apple is one of the biggest and most complex global supply chains in the world, it is a company that nearly half of the nation uses their phone. So some of their key partners are TSMC in Taiwan for chips, Samsung and LG for their displays, and Foxconn and Petron and Wistron for assembly for their phones. Their production mainly happens in China, India, Vietnam, and Brazil, and their products ship through logistic hubs in the US and in Europe. This setup helps Apple reach customers quickly, but it also means that the company needs strong coordination and backup plans in case something does go wrong. And this chart on this slide is saying that it starts at the suppliers, it goes to their purchasing, production, and distribution, and then it goes to the customers. So there's always work going on that people aren't going to see, which is why it's called the internal supply chain. Apple's sourcing strategy is to meet the higher demand while focusing on a more flexible sourcing plan. They're signing long-term contracts with big partners like TSMC and Foxconn to secure their supply, which is really important when that demand is high. They are also expanding production in India and Vietnam to spread out risk so that they're not just keeping a smaller amount of production somewhere, so they're going to expand it more so that they can keep up with this demand that's constantly changing. They're also putting a new assembly plant in Ireland, which is planned and should be handled around 10% of their iPhone production for Europe. Apple is also using predictive analytics to plan materials and production about 6 months in advance, which is really important because when that higher demand comes, it's a very quick change for them. So if they're behind on their production, then these people aren't going to have phones and they're not going to want to get the new iPhone if there's not enough supply for them. So altogether, Apple is taking these steps to hit that 20% production growth goal by 2026, which this is a chart that Apple themselves had made through their target market. So it's just saying that the demographic from their segment is going from people, and then it goes to their marketing strategy, which then goes to their behavioral, which is like their loyal customers with a strong sense of trust for Apple. And then that they're saying that they're also financially stable and risk advertised, which they're making a plan that they're able to get past the worry of any risks. Apple is always constantly trying to change their operation and process to better suit them while they grow. Since they already use systems like Kanban and lean manufacturing to stay efficient, they also use the Kanban system to track materials in real time so they only make what is needed. They also use lean practices to cut waste and make sure workers can switch roles easily if needed. Through their Six Sigma, Apple keeps products defects super low, less than 10 parts per million, which is kind of unheard of in a company this big, which is what makes Apple so successful. And last but not least, their ERP system connects everything, suppliers, logistics, and production. So Apple is always knowing what's happening across their supply chain and can keep up with any issues that may occur. Apple's biggest thing right now would be their risk management. So one of Apple's biggest risks that is still kind of going on is the chip shortage. And in order for them to deal with this, they're working with multiple suppliers like OMC and TSMC instead of relying on just one. So reaching out to multiple suppliers is helping them because if one's shorter than the other, they can just go back and forth and they can rely on the other one. It's not just one strict one, which helps them above other companies because they're staying on top of it by going out and having multiple suppliers. They are also storing their key parts like batteries and chips in backup locations, which is also really important. They're increasing their production in Vietnam and India, which helps spread out the risk too. And they're also using predictive analytics so that Apple can spot possible disruptions early before they become major issues. Which in this chart is just showing the probability by the impact. So if the probability is low, but the impact is high, it's still going to be low. So this is kind of just a cool chart to see how it would be between the probability impact of these risk managements that Apple has. And in conclusion, Apple is pretty smart with how they're going about this situation. With Apple's updated sourcing and operations plan, it focuses on the flexibility, quality, and long-term sustainability. These big strengths are supplier diversity that use the Lean Six Sigma and better forecasting tools, which helps them above other companies. The next step for Apple, though, is that they're finishing supplier contracts, starting construction on the new Ireland facility, and continuing to improve their ERP data systems. This will come over time and will constantly be changing just because their demand is always up and down depending on when they release new phones and when they don't release new phones. But overall, this plan really shows how Apple can keep growing globally while staying efficient and innovative, making new phones and keeping their customers in from phone to phone and also pulling in new customers. Thank you.